All right, real estate investors. Here we are. We're doing something new here. We've got real estate investor conversations, and we have met Rodrigo Parada of Montreal, Quebec, in Canada, and he has some been an investor for a long time, and not a long time, but a few years, and is doing some amazing things. So, welcome, Rodrigo.
Thank you for having me, guys. It's a pleasure to be here, an honor, and happy to be able to share with your audience a bit about myself.
Awesome.
Parfait, bienvenue. C'est un grand plaisir de vous avoir aujourd'hui.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup.
So, for those of our viewers that do not speak French, if you don't mind, Rodrigo, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, my name is Rodrigo Parada. I was born and raised here in Montreal. I've been investing in real estate since 2018 and basically focusing on the multifamily space since day one. I bought my first fourplex in 2018 with my brothers, my dad, and my wife. So, it's always been a family affair. And bought more properties here in Quebec. And eventually around 2020, 2021, starting getting to the point where most of retail investors get to, where our debt to income ratio is capped out. So was looking at different possibilities and always knew that I was going to get into bigger multifamily assets. But I had the self-awareness that I was going to need some coaching and some mentorship. So I joined a networking group, got the training required to start buying more buildings, and that led me to passively investing in Ontario. And then I got into the Albertan market and closed a 38 unit over there with new partners that I have. So since then, thank you. Since then, I've been looking at different markets across the country in the United States. And I've also actually come back home in Quebec and start looking at new builds to buy off plans. So different strategies that reflect the different market cycles and the different opportunities that we have. But yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. Yeah.
Nice.
Wow, but that's great. But within the gist of it, though, let's take it a step back for some of the new investors that might be watching. Um, where would you say that your journey, kind of from starting with the family business, it was slower? How long did it take you to propel and pivot from there to actually going and acquire that 36 plex?
So that's a very good question because obviously when I just give out the blurb of information that I just did, it doesn't show the hardships and the trials and error that I had to go through personally and with my partners. So basically, I would say from the moment that I intentionally started looking at Alberta as a market to the moment that we closed on the 38 unit, that was roughly a year and a half. And we had, I think, four to five other properties that just didn't pan out or didn't work. So it's not a fast thing. It shouldn't be. You need to do your due diligence. But realistically, yeah, that I would say it's roughly a year and a half from the moment I got intentional about it, for sure.
Wow. And you started off saying uh, you started off with a family affair, investing with your brothers and your parents. Now, a lot of people are skeptical about having family as investors. How was that experience with you?
Um, so I will say that the reason why I initially went for that is just because I was listening to Bigger Pockets since 2015. So always like getting into the multifamily space and learning about investing in the States and understanding the power of real estate, really. And I would say around the 2017 mark, I had a good job. I was working at a major railroading industry in Canada. And we were having, I think, dinner with my family one time. And I just looked around the table and I realized that in a few years, if I do start investing in real estate, I didn't want to be in a position where I was the only one that was doing well when I was in family gathering. So that was the approach that I had with my brothers and my dad and my wife. So that's where it started. Now, to go into the nitty gritty of what you just asked, Jim, obviously there are some challenges dealing with friends and family when you first start off because what we need to understand is there's always going to be a bit of a, no, I wouldn't say necessarily conflictual situation, but you're fighting against the image that certain people have of you. Because up until that point, you are that certain person in their eyes, but then all of a sudden you get sophisticated, you learn more about real estate investing, and you appear in front of them as if, quote unquote, the expert. So it's not that what you're saying is not right. It's just that the perception that they have of you is different. So my challenge was that in my family, it's just making sure that we got to an understanding where what I was sharing with them was actually truthful. And then the moment that we got past that barrier, I think that it's the same with any partnership, is you got to make sure that every single action that you take is for the well-being of everybody involved, right? So being transparent, making sure that everything is on paper, getting the right legal counsel to make sure that your documents are well aligned, so that, you know, whenever there's a situation that changes, or you know, life plans change for anybody involved in the partnership, whether it's family or somebody else, everything is already in the contract, so we know how to act. So we remove the emotions from it. So a great learning opportunity. I'm still learning from it because I'm still in partnership with my family. We're still growing, but I would say that that's the wise approach that I had to learn while doing it.
Now, Irismar, you and I have seen time and time again, no matter how good a friendship or a family relationship is, the need for a lawyer and everybody to have their lawyer in terms of making sure that the documentation and everything is in place and everybody understands their role and what the commitment is for.
Yes, no, 100%. And I appreciate that you share that, because you really, Rodrigo, put the approach on, it's still a business, we educated, and everyone was free. Now, did you find yourself where you actually needed to set, call it, the boundaries of family relationship to the boundaries of business relationships? Because then that
Yes.
would also make it a better communication going forward. So if you don't mind, let's highlight that a little bit.
No, that's a very good question, because that's kind of like the second layer of complexities to these partnerships, right? The boundaries or the legal responsibilities, as you would put it, in a JV agreement or a shareholder agreement. So um, I would say that initially I didn't. We weren't in a position that everybody knew their responsibilities because of lack of experience, right? Initially, you start off a partnership, you're buying your first multifamily, we'll all work together, we'll all take care of everything. But as much as the intentions are there, that's not the most efficient way of managing a business, right? So with experience, what happened is that eventually we had to get to an understanding and have some real conversations between each other, so that we could delegate properly to the individuals what they needed to do. So instead of trying to be good at everything, we just focused on one aspect of the business that we were going to be excellent at. And that's the same thing, whether it's with family or partners that you meet on your journey, that you need to focus on, really.
Okay. And now this one, because it just came up and I have to ask, has there been times where you actually have said no to a family member that they can come on board? Because sometimes the views are not in alignment.
Yes. Yes. And yeah, that's a very good question, because it's part of the growth, right? It's kind of like
Yeah.
that's the way that I like to say it, because I feel that when we're in entrepreneurship, not just real estate, but any type of business, it's kind of like dating, right? Like, so when you first get to dating, you get to learn about people, you get to learn about yourself a bit, but it's not about really figuring out what you want. It's more being focused on what you really don't want, and then you're okay with that, right? So I would say that on my end, what ended up happening is I understood where I had to say no because of what was asked. If you're in a position where you're really, like, let's say when we first start off, and we are the person who's doing the majority of the work, and we're getting educated, and we're getting out there, putting in offers, doing the walkthroughs, doing the actual work, and you approach somebody that you actually care about or that you love for an opportunity to better their lives, and you're just being challenged, but you've done your homework and you know what you're doing, that is a great opportunity, then you know, I have the tendency to think that I'm not here to convince anybody. I'm here to work with somebody. So
Yes.
so it's a cooperation, and that would be a situation where I had to say no, because you know you need to protect your peace, and you also need to protect the relationship long term, right?
Right. Very great point. I just recently had a conversation with a friend and I thought, they're talking about their situation and I've been pretty quiet on what we do in the real estate investing world for many years. I don't really talk about it. And I thought, okay, well, you know what? Maybe I'll talk about this opportunity that we're looking at and, just get the feel for it. And I mentioned it to them and got a little bit, going in the conversation. And I just thought, I could feel the pushback and all the similar type of things that you experienced as well, Rodrigo. And I thought, you know what, I should have just kept my mouth shut and stuck with the community that we know and the people that we know that understand what an investment looks like, understand, the bumps that can be faced along the journey and those types of things. So it's difficult. It makes it difficult because we're really trying to bring people that, like you said, we love and we care about and trying to make a better future for them and their kids and their families.
Yeah, and you can't fake that. You can't fake that feeling and that approach, right? Like you actually care about people. But from a personal standpoint, I've had more people that I knew in my previous life, quote unquote, reaching out recently because, you know, the level of success that I'm getting attracts people. So there, it's not the same type of conversation, going back to what I said earlier about trying to convince them.
Right.
Now they're more open to listening and trying to understand what I'm doing, right? So I think it's kind of like a work in progress that ends up happening organically as you get these deals done, as you have a certain level of success, and you just keep on having the same attitude and the same energy that you just want to help people, right? That's the beauty of what we're doing right now is if you're surrounded by other real estate investor and you have the opportunity to have that in your life, you end up realizing that the scarcity mindset is not really something that's prevalent in those networks. You know, we are of the abundance mindset. We believe that it's not just about having a piece of the pie, but there's a whole kitchen that we can eat out of, and everybody can have a piece, right? So again, going back to what I was saying, like you can't fake that emotion, you can't fake that feeling. So that attracts eventually people that will want to listen to you and work with you.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you for highlighting that because it actually bears mentioning. It's the community, it is people, as Jim mentioned, but it's also like-minded individuals. So if you are in a position where you're just starting and you necessarily might not have the network, then seek out those networks in social media. They're out there, they're representing themselves, even us. But connect who resonates with you and add more of them in your day to day, because that's critical. Now,
Yeah.
taking us back a little bit into that journey, what would you say were like your top two challenges that really make you stop and kind of challenge your drive and your dream?
Um, okay, so I'll give you one technical answer and then I'll give you a mindset answer after that. The technical answer, one of the biggest challenges that we had was when I did my first house hack, which is basically buying a multifamily property and then moving into it and having tenants help you with the expenses. I sold my single family home and moved into a triplex that we were going to renovate. And then when we moved in, we realized that there was a whole lot more work than what we intended. So I'm talking like carpenter ants, talking about foundation issues, talking having a suite in the basement that the city was collecting taxes since 1984, but city planning never considered legal. So like just hardships
Jeez.
and left hooks and liver blows and while going through COVID, because this was in 2020, and being laid off temporarily from my employer at the time. So you know, these hardships, basically they ended up being one of my biggest challenge because I was in it on a daily basis. That's where I lived. So I would say that that was a big one, but the way that I got through it is just by focusing on getting one step ahead of the other one. And it's kind of like with, I remember hearing this quote that, you know, mountain climbers, when they're going up the Everest, they don't look at the summit. They just focus on where their next feet is landing. Because if they focus on the summit, that's when you get discouraged. It seems too big to achieve. So in that moment, like it's either networking with other investors that had gone through something similar so that we quote unquote share the pain,
Yeah.
or just focusing on what needs to be done and focusing on my why, which was my kids and my wife, right? And getting the level of success. There's another quote that I remember hearing around that time from Churchill that said, if you're going through hell, why would you stop? And that was like, it resonated with me exactly at the moment. So yeah, that was one of the more technical, biggest hardships that I had. And then on a mindset perspective, I would say that it was the networking at first, as weird as it sounds, because up until the point that I started going to these meetups or meeting other investors, I was doing my own thing, listening to podcasts, and really not connecting with everyone. And the biggest challenge that I had was coming or being at peace with the idea that I'm going to go and talk to a complete stranger about what I'm doing, and what if they have done or achieved more than me, and why would they want to listen to me, right? That good
Yeah.
old imposter syndrome or limiting beliefs,
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
um that was my biggest hurdle initially, but I remember during the first networking event that I did, I'm not necessarily somebody who's shy, but I just didn't know how to navigate that social situation. And I just remember finding one person that I spoke to the majority of the evening, right? And that made me leave that event feeling better about the process and realizing, and this is the important part, realizing that we have more to share than we realize. And more importantly, we are never fully aware of who we are inspiring, because this person that I met at that networking event was on the verge of putting a property under contract, whereas I had done maybe one or two transactions and I still considered myself a newbie at that stage, right? But that was the confirmation for me that I shouldn't overthink these things, and just, you know, instead of just dipping my toes in the pool, just jump in, you know.
Love it. Love it. And that's what we need. We need to take that step and take that risk. I mean, we're never going to expand our minds and our learnings if we don't take that step and do something. I mean, it's all about failing forward, right? We got to take that step, learn from our mistakes, and keep going at it. Don't do try not to repeat it going forward. Now, you guys started off in Quebec, and it sounds like you really scaled when you were going into the prairies there in Alberta. What was that like? Were you scared to take on a bit much bigger project, the 32 unit?
um
38.
Yes, 38. That's a good question. And I think it's going to be more a reflection of who I am and how I'm built internally than anything. Uh, Through my entrepreneurship career, what I've realized is I'm the type of individual that's going to jump out of a plane and figure out how the parachute works as I'm falling to my death. So I didn't overthink it. I was looking at properties online. I was running like doing my underwriting, just sticking to the fundamentals of real estate, and then realized that there were opportunities over there. You know, just to give you an example, the 38 unit that we ended up buying, we bought it at 50K per door. And
Wow.
it wasn't run down. It was just poorly managed. It had a 55% vacancy rate. So I knew, looking at the whole picture, that this was, it wasn't going to be that difficult of a challenge, because if you're buying something at roughly 50% of what the average is on the market at that point, it's kind of hard to mess it up.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think it's a combination of my personality, but also understanding the fundamentals of what we're doing, right? Like, numbers don't lie. um, and then having the right boots on the ground team and going over there and walking the property and looking at the municipality that it was in and understanding that whether it's in the prairies, Quebec, Ontario, the United States, Latin America, you know, brick is brick, a building is a building, multifamily assets are a multifamily asset. Just do your due diligence and it'll be fine.
Awesome. Awesome. And now raising the capital for a building of that size can be a little bit overwhelming as well. What challenges did you have with that, and how did you overcome them?
So I would say that the initial challenge was also a mindset one. It was this again limiting beliefs of who am I to raise, you know, close to $1 million for this acquisition when it wasn't something that I had done before. So there was a lot of work that needed to go into my own being, and assuming the role and understanding that this is who I am, this is what I've been working towards, and then just going at it. I would say that this is also something that if I can share with the audience, you know, we have a tendency to believe that if we find the deal, the money will come. But 2023, if you were in the industry, you'll realize that money dried up. Um, the investors starting to get a bit scared because what was going on in the media and what we were reading, and it's totally normal. So it wasn't like it was in 2020 or 2021 where you could just, you know, just post about a deal or talk to somebody and they had money flowing from everywhere. So it's understanding the psychology behind the money, right, and how to approach these pitches. So I was fortunate enough to learn about lending through registered funds, and that was one way that we were able to secure some of the capital to close this deal, and that's how we got it done. So yeah, I think that's mainly it, Jim.
Right on. And then you did end up creating an MFT.
That yes, that is correct. So because of this whole process and because I had partners also involved with me, from a technical standpoint, and please for the audience, do your own due diligence. I'm just sharing from my own experience. But normally how you would secure these types of loans is through a second rank mortgage on a property that has the equity. I had the properties in my portfolio in Quebec that had the equity so that we could secure these loans. But because I was in a partnership with other people, we were advised that from a legal standpoint, it wasn't fair for me to just take that quote unquote risk. So we tried to find other ways of securing these loans. And after a lot of trial and error and fees and you know all the good stuff, we ended up having to create an MFT out of necessity. So like everything good in life, out of necessity came the thing that we needed to create, and that's the MFT.
Now these are costly ventures doing getting registered funds for investors set up. The MFT is set up. How do you structure it so your cost is reduced for those curious about
Well,
this?
that's I don't think you can really reduce your cost. That's the thing. You're gonna have to pay, and more importantly, these are the types of documentation processes that you need to make sure that you're paying to have the right legal counsel. So we were talking about before, like working with my family and making sure that all my contracts and my agreements were done proactively so that we were all protected. Now this is like a scale up or a level up because the moment that we start a company or a corporation in Canada, we have a fiduciary duty as the director or as an owner of that company to make the right decisions for the well-being of your investors, your partners, and the entity itself. So in my mind, it's the cost of doing business. If I can sum it up with that, it's you pay your legal counsel, you pay your accountants, you have to pay so that you're protected and you protect your entity. The one thing that I would add to that though is it's kind of like we were talking about like dating earlier and networking and learning about different people. It's the same thing with professionals. right?
Yeah.
Like if you're gonna hire a firm, well, take the time to meet the people that you're going to be involved with, so that there's some sort of connection, right? Like a lawyer is going to be somebody that you're going to be talking on a daily basis, or you're going to be reach out to them when you have a bit of anxiety and you don't know what's happening. So you want to make sure that you have a good relationship and you connect on the personal level, and it's not just business. So take the time to find the right team that you want to work with is what I would say or add.
I was just talking to a friend this past weekend at the US Investor Summit, and they invest in the States. They're Canadian investing down there. And for property managers in the city, in the states that they're investing in, they narrowed their search down. There's a lot of property managers in the US, and they narrowed the search down to about a dozen. Had some calls, narrowed it down to six, narrowed it down to four, and then flew to the state and the city that they're in, and each day sat with them for 2 hours in their office interviewing them. And he says, when you sit in for 2 hours in a property manager's office, you see a lot of stuff going on in there. You see how they're reacting. You see how they treat their employees, and you get them uncomfortable because you're there for 2 hours interrupting their thing. And he has an incredible property manager for the past 2 years. So but it was like, wow, the amount of work that you go through. And, the people on the other side, the investors that are investing in your projects, they don't understand the amount of work that you put in to try to limit the amount of headaches that the investors are going to be facing.
100%. That's key what you just said in that story, because one of the things that I remember from my corporate life is this idea where you hire slow, fire fast. And all these stakeholders that you build around your business, whether it's real estate or any other type of business, you got to make sure that you take the time to learn how they operate and who they are. So a property manager is key to real estate investing, because they're your eyes and ears, and sometimes they basically just alleviate a lot of the hardships that you would have to deal with if you were doing that job. I always, and this is like one of my tips, whenever I'm looking for a specific market or a different region that I want to invest in, before looking at actual properties, I start calling property managers and getting on phone calls with them, because
Wow.
they know the details of the market. They understand the tenant profile, the average rent that you would get. If you're going to be doing any renovations, they know what is the threshold to over renovate a unit for the market that you're in. And sometimes they have deals also.
Yeah.
So to your point, like I'm not surprised, and I think that person is doing the right thing when you have to take the time to meet, to shake hands, and really understand how they operate, because most of the time these things they're make it or break it in a project.
I love that because it's like before you buy an expensive car, call ahead to the insurance company and find out how much the insurance is going to be on that car before you get into that relationship with that car that you can't get out of for about 5 years. So no, that's a great approach to it. Excellent. Now, you've accomplished great things here in Canada. I know you're moving into the United States, so you've got everything down pat, and I bet there is no hurdles for you to climb in the States moving into.
I would be so happy to tell you that that wasn't the case. But as with anything that's good in life, it's not easy, right? So you got to do things right. The same concept, same approach to what I've done in Canada will be applied to what I'm doing in the States. So surrounding myself with the right partners, the right stakeholders, make sure that when we do pull the trigger and we look more aggressively in the States, we're ready to go, and we do things right. So I was at a conference in St. Louis, Missouri over the past few days, RubeCon 24, and I was surrounded with other investors that are investing in the States, learning about different strategies. And basically, I got confirmation that personally, what I'll be doing in the States is similar to what I'm doing in Canada, looking for larger multifamily buildings, probably in the southern states. I'm really keen on Texas. But yeah, that's going to be happening soon.
Awesome. All right. So much to look
Really
forward to.
Yeah,
understood. And of course, you will be starting your due diligence right away.
that is correct. So, you know, going through the same process that we've done up to this point, and you know, it's just the moment that you've done it, and it's kind of cliche to say this because some members of the audience might have heard it, but at one point it takes the same amount of energy to buy a fourplex than it does a 20 unit, because you've gone through the process so much and you've done the underwriting. So it's the same energy once you really know how to set up your acquisition. So for me, where I'm at right now is I'm fully aware of my skill set, what I need to focus on, what my partners need to be handling, so I can go all in and make sure that we have a successful transaction. So yeah, looking forward to that, and sharing with your audience maybe in the future about what we've accomplished, whether it's in the United States or, you know, the rest of Canada, or maybe in Latin America. I'm hearing great things about El Salvador right now, so I'd like
Whoa.
to potentially invest over there.
Ooh.
Okay, looking forward to that. Well, Rodrigo, thank you so much for sharing all this insight and how you overcame so many hurdles on your journey. It's very inspiring for the community, and I'm sure they're going to get a lot out of this. If anybody needs to reach you, Rodrigo, how's the best way to contact you?
I'm on Facebook, Rodrigo Parada, my name, and on Instagram, it's Rodrigo_ad Astra. But I'll put in the comment my link tree so people can connect with me and schedule a call, reach out, whatever it is. Feel free to reach out. I'm here to help. Your success is my success, and I believe that I'm the solutions provider for real estate investors that want to close more deals. So feel free to reach out.
Thank you so very much. And to the audience out there, remember the key takeaways. Do not fall into the comparison syndrome. Do the due diligence and attract the people that you want to emulate or that inspire you, because you need to make sure you take yourself to that next level. So thank you,
Awesome.
everyone.
We are Irismar and Jim. Reach out anytime. Thank you so much, Rodrigo. Have a wonderful day, everyone.